Welcome to Parkbench Tutors. For more information about Parkbench Tutors, look us up at parkbenchtutors.com, or you can find us on Facebook. We're going to continue our AAT access work by looking briefly at income and expenditure. Remember that this is simply an introductory course. So we'll take an example. Marwin owns a bookstore and he sells and rents out textbooks to students. He needs to keep a record of the sales that he makes, and he also needs to keep a record of all the rentals that he makes. And he's going to get money for those two activities, and the money he receives from those activities is called income. Marwin owns his own bookstore, and he makes payments for the electricity, for any new books that he needs, and to pay an assistant. And those sort of things are called expenditure. So we have income and expenditure. Accounting means keeping a record of income and expenditure, right? It's not all of accounting, but that is a part of accounting, keeping a record of income and expenditure. So here's Marwin's record of customers for one day. Here we are. So what's the total income for the day? We would have to add up all those amounts, and that would get us the sum total of the income for the day. How much money did Marwin receive for these? Right? He sells 2 copies of Ricochet's book, and he sells 5 copies of Tina Tora's books. So for the total you're going to multiply 2 times 750 and 5 times 15, and then you're going to add them up, and the total that you should get should be £90. Let's briefly look at an expense for Marwin. Here is an invoice that Marwin has received. We can look at the details on the invoice. What was the expense? The expense was for the use of electricity. How much does he owe before tax? Well, if we look on the right hand side, there's 18 plus 175, and that's what he owes. How many units of electricity were used? Well, there's 2,500 at one price and 120 at another price, so we would need to add both of those together, 2,620. Right, Marwin runs a small van, and he collects books with the van, and he carries out some other work with the van. So, there's his tax disc. What can you tell from this? The tax book disc can be considered a document, if you like. And how much did Marwin pay to tax his van? Well, if you look again towards the centre on the right hand side, you will see the sum of £30 has been entered as the tax. How many months did the tax cover? It expires on the 31st of January 2013, and again if you look on the bottom, it began on the 7th of January 2012, so he got 12 months worth of tax for his van. Let's consider his income and expenditure for a day. Right, there it is, all nicely laid out. So what was the total income? We would have to add up the 3 books that he sold, the rent he received for the textbook, which was £8, and the chemistry texts to the college, which were £500. So he has £563. What was the total expenditure? We need to add together what he paid for the gas bill, for tea and milk for staff, and his wages paid to the assistant for the week. So he has expenditure of £340.30. So now I hope we've introduced the idea of income and expenditure. Let's look at his trading figures for February and see if we can introduce another idea. He has sales and rent income of 6,500. He spends 2,000 on books, and he has expenses of 3,000 on wages. So before expenses are deducted, he has 6,500 minus the 2,000. That's 4,500. So that's how much money he made before the expenses were deducted. And how much money did Marwin make after the expenses were deducted? Well, you deduct 3,000 from the 4,500 and you have £1,500. These ideas of the total income from the sales, less the cost of books, less the cost of sales, and then less the expenses, they are important ideas which we'll say a little more about later on in this course. That brings you to an end of this short introductory session, brought to you by Parkbench Tutors, narrated by David Hopcroft. Thank you for watching and for listening. We wish you success in your studies. You can find us on Facebook or look us up on parkbenchtutors.com.